Hi, I'm Spence Graham, WT8WV with the NEMARCs club here. And this evening, we're going to be talking about contest strategies, how to run a frequency, and station ergonomics. And all that kind of ties together in many ways, all three of those topics. And this was a great suggestion from one of our folks. And so we said, well, let's go ahead and do that this month. We're glad to have everybody here. And these folks are trying to keep me on task here at letting people in. I appreciate Dean for letting me host this evening. And, we hope to have a good visit there. So we're going to talk about contesting, running a frequency, the station ergonomics, everything that goes into contesting. But, you know, it can also apply to general station ergonomics as well. And I think anybody here would say that we have a lot of fun contesting, and we kind of get serious.
Oh yeah, in a fun way.
In a fun way. And in fact, we've become very close and dear friends through the process of it all, and that makes
Absolutely.
it especially fun when we're all in here encouraging each other and spurring each other on and gouging each other in the ribs every once in a while to get moving. And so we just came off a weekend with a long contest and had a lot of fun with CW. We had Scott, how many did we have? Was it 16?
We had 16 guys, which is just about double what we've had in any for that particular contest in previous years.
Right.
And many of the contests in the last 12 months, we've doubled or nearly so. Now, part of that is dealing with COVID, and we've got more people at home, but my sense is that momentum is going to continue. I mean, we may not continue to double and double again, but I think most of these guys are here to stay. And I just got another email this morning from somebody who found our group and was interested. So, you know, I see us continuing to grow.
Absolutely. Well, and one of the things that's fun, I'm not exactly in Northeast Maryland. I will say this: I'm originally from Maryland, so that helps get me. I'm an old Garrett County guy. I was born and raised there, but we do span a radius depending on what contest that we're in. Their ARRL has a radius, and CQ Worldwide has a radius, so those do come into play. But what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some of the things that we each do, because we do Morse code contests, CW contests, we do sideband, we do RTTY. So we're going to talk about strategies, but sometimes some strategies cross over. Some are more specific to the particular contest, but we're going to do some talking about that. I'm going to kind of go round robin. If you have a question, definitely put that in the chat, and I'll try and address those when we can. There, I'm going to ask Steve, W3JX. Steve, especially in some of these CW contests, really brings his A game there, and I'm sure when you routinely hang over 1,000 contacts in a weekend, there's got to be some strategy in there. And I know that Scott did that this weekend. Steve, we missed you, and Scott did yeoman service for the group this weekend with over 1,000 contacts there. But Steve, when we're doing contests, what are some of the things that you see are important when you sit in that chair and start keying up the mic for you, or the key?
You could probably do 2 hours right now.
Yeah.
And frankly, I have a sheet of paper. I'm not much for chat rooms, so I'm hoping that, you know, if I hear something that comes up in terms of a question, I'll jot it down, and maybe during the course of the evening, we can address it later. CW is my favorite mode. I'm not particularly fond of single sideband for contesting. It just gives me a headache because I got to be chit-chatting the whole weekend. I'd rather keep my mouth closed and eat dry roasted peanuts and work a CW contest. But I have the good fortune of having learned the Morse code when I was very young from my father. And so Morse code to me is just another language like German or French or English.
Yep.
And having the ability to sit at a radio and listen to those dots and dashes come across the airwaves at high speed and know what they mean is a lot of fun for me.
Well, and I agree with you. Scott's the one that kind of needled me for a few contests saying, you've got to get into some CW here with us. And I ended up doing the CW Academy with the CWOps.org group. And that really spurred me on. And, you know, that first one or two CW contests, I was awful nervous and at the key there, but it quickly became my favorite. And I will honestly say this, I can remember thinking, I will never be able to copy at that speed. It just sounds so insanely fast. And really, it's only about 20 to 21, 22 words a minute on probably the average there. But if you will punch through that, and that was what Scott encouraged me to do, is just punch through, get through that first hour or two, and you'll start hearing, all of a sudden you start hearing your call sign kind of almost as a rhythmic melody. You'll hear that 5NN report as a melody almost in there. You'll hear that TU for thank you. And it kind of starts clicking. And so CW is not as intimidating as what it initially appears. Scott, I know that you did over 1,000 CW contacts this past weekend. And I remember in our little debriefing there that you were saying that you tried to run a frequency. Now, running a frequency in a CW contest is a lot different.
It's a whole new
trying to run a frequency in a sideband contest. Look, tell us a little bit about your experience with running a frequency.
Right. Well,
and explain what running a frequency is.
Okay, I want to take a step back just a little bit because I think the theme here is kind of an intro to contesting, and I'm not sure that CW is where guys are going to be starting. So I don't want to get too far down that path. And I know we're recording this, so not only for the guys here, and we've got some new guys here, but some people who may come along and see what we're doing. We definitely want to stick to the very intro. Hey, how do I get into a contest for the first time? What's this all about? We want to make sure we cover that. But just very briefly, because it was thrilling. I mean, I've been ham since I've been 14. So I'm almost 59 now. CW, I learned CW to get my license, and I played around with it a little bit. But in the beginning, I was all single sideband, particularly for contesting. Slowly but surely, Dave, N3HCN, who's an amazing CW op, he would come over just because he didn't have a station at home. So he would operate here, and I'd just sit beside him and listen, and I'd kind of start to get it. And I finally got to the point where I was okay searching and pouncing, especially with the X spotting. You can click on the call, so you know what you expect to hear, and when you expect to hear letters, you can copy pretty quickly, just to make sure they're correct.
Right.
So I've done that pretty solidly for 4 or 5 years in a contest environment, but only a few times have I actually run a frequency, and that's a whole different. You don't know what's coming, and it turns out, the previous ones I did were domestic, and you might get a call or 2 or 3 at a time, and there's a couple to pick out, and that's okay. For whatever reason, I called CQ on 40 meters, and within 2 or 3 calls, it sounded like the world was calling me. I mean, it was just a blur. And I guess it was just guys are using reverse beacon network, something that maybe doesn't happen so much for domestic stuff. Oh my goodness. And I was nervous anyway. And throughout that whole first session, my fingers were literally shaking, just trying to pull those guys out. But it was exhilarating at the same time, and is also really important. I mean, it was obvious. I was working guys who were setting power levels 100 watts, some were 5 watts, some were 50. Guys that were not running a frequency at all during the contest. If you want them in your log, you're going to have to run a frequency sum yourself.
Right. Well, and for those that are maybe a little unfamiliar, running a frequency simply means that you are parked on a frequency. That is basically you're staking a claim to that frequency, and you are calling CQ, and the world, or if it's a North America contest, North America is coming to you, as opposed to searching and pouncing, what we call S&P, whereas you're just going up and down the dial. You're utilizing the band map and the N3FJP software, clicking on it. If you've got rig control, it takes your radio to that call sign's frequency, those folks that are on that frequency. You're searching and you're pouncing on them. But running a frequency, whether it's in CW or sideband or RTTY, is a lot different technique when you're doing that. And there's a difference too, I think, as well. I'm going to pitch to Don Vetter here in a second or two there, because Don's somewhat new to contesting and has really taken the world by storm, and has become quite a good contester there. But there's a difference between what we call 100 watts in a wire, meaning a radio that is standard with basically 100 watt maximum output on it, into a dipole or a wire antenna, versus whether you have a beam antenna, an amplifier on a tower, things like that. But Don, what's been your experience as somewhat new to contesting, as far as what you see as anything from ergonomics in your shack to your strategy of a contest? Are you developing some of those thoughts at this point?
Well, I'll take a couple of words here. So I'm looking, I might take a step back again just a little bit.
I think we need to step back.
I know a lot of our audience here, and I know, that they have some familiarity with contesting. Bob N3BD, I think, is somewhat familiar with contesting. I don't know about Steve, KC3LMT, and Rich, KC3OQJ. I have to spit it out. So Steve and Rich, have you contested at all? Are you familiar with how ham radio contests work?
Hi, this is Rich. No, I participated in the WPX one, and that was my first experience contesting. It was very interesting. I've been lurking, either on the Discord or, for a while. I've been trying to get my station back up, and you guys it looks like you guys have so much fun that I just couldn't help but jump in. And
we do.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the more the merrier. We're really glad you're part of it.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm not shooting right over everybody's head.
Well, that's kind of, I kind of feel like we're in level 2, if not level 3 here, and we need to ratchet this way back if this is an introductory.
So I can say a couple of words. So Paul, I'm sorry I missed you. I'm sure you're hearing. Paul, are you familiar with contesting at all?
I am not. I'm a newbie, okay. And as I mentioned earlier, about 10 of 7. I'll be taking my test this Saturday.
Awesome, Paul.
So anyway.
So I'm going to talk really, really basic here. Spence, I'm sorry I'm kind of derailing things just a little bit. Okay. But Paul, first we have NEMARC. And NEMARC is awesome. And it's awesome because they do stuff like this, because there's a group of very experienced people here who know a lot about ham radio and who've been very generous to me as a relatively new ham. And they've been generous in basic ham shack setup and teaching me about antennas and teaching me about contesting. But I don't want to totally leave contesting. So I think most people have the gist of what the basic ham operating is. But in a contest, you're typically trying to make as many contacts with people in the United States, or in a DX contest like the CW contest that this weekend was just to get other countries. You couldn't even make contacts with here. But the very basics of a contest are that you either call CQ, which is basically putting your call sign out there, and somebody responds to you and gives you their information, and you record that. And then in the end, the contest is determined by who makes the most contacts. So that's if you call CQ. That's not typical for a beginner. Typically, as a beginner, you listen for other people who are calling CQ in a contest, and maybe they're calling CQ from England, and you put in, they'll be putting out their call sign, and then a group of people will try to respond to him and say, you just give them your call sign and they'll respond to you. And then you'll give them your information. Say, for example, you live in Maryland and your name is Don, and they'll give you their information. You probably already have some of it from their call sign, and you record that in a contest software like N3FJP contest software. And it's just a really exciting thing because it provides an opportunity to practice your ham radio skills. And in my case, I really love to compete. Plus, even if you're not competing, it's a chance to make contacts all around the world in a weekend.
Which is thrilling.
That
does not get old. It doesn't.
Yeah, so there's just, those are some of the things that I get out of contesting. Contesting is challenging because when there's lots of people out there and people are competing to get somebody else's call sign, having a station that can get through the pileup can be good. So a pileup is so when somebody's calling CQ, it's not always that one person responds to him, right? There may be 10 people, there may be 2 people, there may be 50 people, and it can be really challenging situation. So these things, as we start with these basics of contesting, it's kind of, how do you deal with some of those things? So I kind of wanted to reset down to the beginning. I think that there's a large group of people here who already know all those things. Right. But then there's a couple of new guys who NEMARC does a terrific job of bringing into the ham radio world and teaching them how it works. And they've done that for me.
Right. So, we're here for the new guys this evening, and I think we need to focus on that. I just started jotting down a little list of just the basics of if I'm a new guy and I want to play in a contest, what do I need? And I've got 4 things, and maybe you guys can add a little bit more. Number 1, you need a decent antenna. Doesn't mean it has to be an expensive antenna. If you've got a dipole at a reasonable height, you can do pretty darn well. I've made 700-800 contacts with 100 watts on some of these early on. But you need something that's going to get your signal out. You will get frustrated very quickly if you're calling guys and nobody comes back. You're gonna say, why did I get involved in this, and go collect coins or something. So the very number one thing is to plan out some kind of antenna that's going to give you a chance to really make cues at a fast enough clip that's going to keep you interested and not feeling like you're banging your head against the wall. Second thing, of course, you need a decent rig. And for guys starting out, something like the ICOM 7300 is an awesome rig. It doesn't have to be top of the line by any means, but it's just something stable with rig interface. And then the third thing I would suggest, and these two go hand in hand, you need software. If you're part of NEMARC, that's easy. You're welcome to use my software, and I make that available to all the NEMARC guys. And you want to interface your rig with that. So as you tune or as you click on a DX spot, your rig jumps right to it. And the software, it keeps track of your score. It lets you know if, hey, I worked that guy before, so I won't work him again because he'd be a duplicate. It wouldn't count again. It factors in, as Don was talking this weekend, different contests have different rules for scoring. And this weekend we had multipliers for each country that we worked on each band and mode. So you work England on 40, you work them on 20, and so on, and all those multipliers add up. The software takes care of all that for you, so you can see real time exactly what you're doing. Those were my four kind of essentials to, as if I'm sitting down to contest for the first time, the things that I would want is a good antenna, a decent rig interface set up with the software. And I don't know if you guys would add anything.
Can I add something?
Sure, Chris, go ahead.
It's like Don, the only contesting I ever did, and it wasn't contesting, was field day. And that was the only time. That was my introduction to the point system and all those kind of things. And then when I found the NEMARC repeater, I heard one of the midweek nets, and Scott's like, "Oh, here, check it out," and whatever. And I got the Discord and everything else. And then, so one of the things that I found I didn't know really much about was logs, how to submit them. Even though it's like on the page, they have them on the pages how to submit the logs. So I figured that exchanges. Sometimes I look at the different contests and they have different exchanges. So that threw me. This past weekend, I got that mixed up because I was looking at the exchange this weekend, which was like the signal report, the power, and I got all these guys. The contacts I did make were few, but I did have some statesides, and I'm like, I don't, what do I put in there? And Don's like, there is no stateside. I'm like, well, that makes sense because the log's not working for that. And the other thing was the multipliers too, and even like I think it was the RIDI contest. Like I even read through it, and I still missed the multipliers. Right. So I guess one of the things is like I ask questions because I don't I don't really I don't.
Well, let's explain real quick. Somebody put something in the chat there about explaining multipliers. A multiplier it does just that. It multiplies your score, and oftentimes if it is a let's say it's a North American stateside or North American contest, the multiplier might be each state that you work. So let's say you had 50 potential multipliers in the US. If it's North America, they often give you credit for working the various provinces of Canada. Also, these multipliers, depending, and this is why you always want to read the rules of each contest, because some multipliers you get that multiplier once. Other contests you get it for each time you work that different state on different bands. So the multipliers become exponential at that point. And so all of a sudden, if you had 100 contacts, let's say, but you had 2 multipliers, your points would be 200. But however, if you had 100 contacts and you had 100 multipliers, now all of a sudden the math gets a lot more interesting there. So you want to try and see how you can maximize those multipliers. Oftentimes there is a multiplication factor too in some of these contests where you might get 1 point for a sideband contact, a voice contact. You might get 2 points if you made that contact working Morse code or CW. So the understanding how the points are assessed. Some of the state QSO parties, those are smaller style contests. A lot of times the multiplier is how many different counties you worked in that state. For instance, this coming weekend, South Carolina and North Carolina have their QSO parties. And so you get a multiplier for each county in those states that you work. Also, sometimes they'll have a bonus multiplier where if you work special call signs that they will publish, you might get an extra 250 points every time you work that one particular call. So your multiplier is a strategy.
Spence, can you enable the screen sharing? It looks like you turned that off too.
Sure,
I got CQ Worldwide.
Where do I do that?
I also have something after.
Oh, share screen.
It's something as a host you can enable. I forget how to click through it. I haven't hosted enough, but yeah, he should have enabled that.
I don't know, Scott.
Scott, did you look to see my? It looks like I can share my screen. I'm
all right, here
I've
you should be able to share it now, Scott. I think.
Hey.
Okay, or Don, if you want to go ahead, that's fine.
I'm just going to try. I'm going to click on it. I don't have CQ Worldwide up, so keep talking for a minute, Spence.
Dan had a.
Well, I can do mine. Let's see. Yeah, okay. So here is CQ Worldwide. I'm assuming you can.
Yeah,
you can see
I
that.
got you now.
So just as an example of multiplier, well, I had 830 contacts for 2,365 points, but the multipliers are what, the number of QSOs are important because mults without points don't help you, but then a lot of contacts without mults don't really help you either. You need that combination. So I wound up with 827. But what this is, and in the case of CQ Worldwide, there's actually 2 multipliers potentially you can get. You get a multiplier for each country, the XCC entity, and you also get a multiplier for the CQ zones.
That's
Software
right.
takes care of all that for you, but that's what. So for example, on 160 meters, I had 6 countries, 5 zones, 80 meters, 13 countries, 10, 40, 56, 20, and so on. But if you add all these multipliers up, that adds to your 350. So that's kind of an example of where that comes from. And Don, did you have something you wanted to show? I'll stop.
Again, I'm just trying to keep the people who haven't done. We have a range of people, but that was just, it's a first. That's a log. Right?
Yeah.
That Scott had up there, right? It's a log, right. And if you put it back up again, Scott, we can talk about. We talked about multipliers.
I actually have something to add before we go on to that, if that's okay.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah. So I guess I have 2 things to add that before we go too far along into it, is that contesting originally started out as a test. So it was a test of you understanding how to operate and how to become a more proficient operator, which encompasses more than just getting on the mic or just getting on the key or getting in a digital contest and just transmitting and receiving. It's understanding how to deal with like adversity during the contest, how to be able to troubleshoot your equipment, to be able to operate your equipment at its high proficiency, to be able to operate the things that you do at your operating station at the highest proficiency, but then also understand propagation and also understand how things are changing in propagation and things like that you will have to adjust in your operating, and all of that encompasses in the contest itself. And if you look at some of the mission statements or some of the objectives of these contests, it specifically says that still. So a lot in the CQ contest still. So that's something also to consider as a new person, is like contests were originally set up for you to become a more proficient operator in all aspects, not just sitting at the bench and doing what you're doing. So that's it's something to consider when you sit down and do it. And another thing I wanted to add too, and it's also, of course, there's a lot of spirit involved in contesting, of course, and there's a lot of competition and there's a lot of friendly camaraderie, and that's all the things that come along with it, and that's how it's kind of evolved from its early days. But a really good resource here is going to contestcalendar.com. Now, as everybody was talking about the different rules for different contests, they have different multipliers, different exchanges. So those are the things that you really want to consider. You want to consider what bands that the contest actually it resides in. So there's going to be different bands, and they're also going to have so with different bands, you're going to have different strategies too. But so each contest is going to be a different group of bands. Then there's also going to be multipliers. So multipliers are going to be what Spence said, like where he gave an example of states. There could be a VHF contest is grid squares. So there's going to be some sort of category that's going to be a unique category that's going to give you that multiplier. So you can have you can have your QSO count, you can have your multipliers, and then you have your final scores. So there's that. And then you also want to consider what is your exchange. So each contest is going to have a different exchange from you to the person that's calling CQ, or if you're calling CQ, you can have an exchange with that person that's calling you. So all of those considered, you want to go to contestingcalendar.com. And if you click on, you can click on the 8-day calendar, which will give you the contests that are happening within the next 8 days, or you can look at the entire year. And each one of those contests that are happening, so let's say we're looking at the 8-day. Let me share my screen so everybody can see this here. So if you look at this here, so you can see all of the contests here that are listed here for the next 8 days.
We're not.
And it'll tell you like when they're happening and their times. Yeah.
No. There we go.
No, I'm sorry.
There we go.
There we go.
Yep. Got it.
Okay. So you can see the 8-day. So we're at contestingcalendar.com, and you can click on 8-day, and that'll take you to this. And this is the 8-day. And so this will give you all of the contests that are happening within the next 8 days. And see, there's a lot of them. And the nice thing is that for each one of these, there's a hyperlink. And let's just go to where I say like the 160 single sideband. It'll go down here to the 160 single sideband. It'll tell you the graphical focus of it. It'll tell you the different classes that you can enter in as, the operating hours. It'll tell you what the different power classes are. It'll tell you exactly what the exchange is in the contest. It'll give you then your QSO points. So you're going to get 2 with your 2 points for your own country, and so on and so forth. They'll give you your multipliers. This is the multipliers that we had just talked about. And then here's the score calculation. So this gives you like the briefing of the whole thing instead of having to read through like a whole page of thing. This will give you the skinny of it. Then it'll also give you where you can upload your Cabrio file, which is what you would create out of the logging program that Scott provides. And that's how so it basically puts your whole log into this file that is easily readable by, it's a standard. So like all the different contesting hosts can easily read it and parse your information. And then here's your rules. If you want to see the full set of rules, it'll give you the hyperlink for that too. So this site here is a really good resource, especially for someone who's just starting out. You're not as familiar with these contests because you're not doing them on a regular basis. You're like, oh, I want to try this new one. This sounds fun. Well, here's the synopsis of each one of them for the 8-day. So just wanted to add that in before you went further on.
And we do have a contest calendar on the NEMARC site with a link to right to the page that Dan's showing. The contest list on the NEMARC site is much abbreviated. It just has the major ones that were more likely to participate. I think there's something like 300 contests now. But we do have, like I say, that a subset with a link to that information. Yeah, there you go. And that right up top is the link.
Can I add something real quick? I think
Steve please jump in.
Steve had something. He had his hand up for a second, but I'm not sure if everyone understands who hasn't done a contest what an exchange is. I know it sounds.
No, that's a great question.
And then if anyone who hasn't, because a lot of information has been discussed, and I've been doing this for a little while. So if any of the newcomers have questions, it's probably just, I think. Right.
It's very easy for us to jump ahead. And I really want to start at the beginning. I don't want anybody to feel like they're not comfortable asking anything. You ask away, and the exchange is a great question.
Let me throw something in a second.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
We had 15, 16, 17 guys in the last contest. Every contest that comes up, I go into it with a plan. My plan is, am I going to be there for the entire contest? And if so, that's a whole different mindset of preparation. Stephen has a 4-year-old. We call that QRM. So that has an effect on his ability to contest. I don't have that problem. But for the guys that are just going to get a radio and get an antenna, come around contest weekend and don't worry about a score. Just get a feel for what's going on. Even if you sit there and do nothing but listen the first weekend. And then if you want to jump in and make a contact or two and get your score on the NEMARC scoreboard, that's terrific.
That's awesome.
And that's how you learn. I mean, when I started contesting, there was no software. And I was using a semi-automatic bug to send and receive Morse code, and all of the information I was receiving, I was writing down in a logbook. So contesting went on before there was software, but the software has added a whole magnitude of skill and increased scores. But we have that. But at any rate, I'd say Paul or Steve or Rich, just get on and listen. Or you got your license and you have the privilege to send and receive. Go just a little bit at a time and not worry about the competitive side.
Okay, one of the things I wanted to discuss too was with regard to, as we're contesting, some of the strategies, whether you're a beginner or whether you've got some time and one of the best things that we can do from a strategy standpoint is spending that time in the chair. That there's nothing that compares to actually getting in there and doing some contesting there. Because
hey Spence, you got some knockers on your door there.
Oh, okay. Okay. How'd Dan get thrown out?
He had to reboot.
Oh, did he? But the time every hour you spend in the chair in a contest, I think that you gain some experience. You learn some things there. I think you also learn about your own station a good bit. What works. In other words, if my radio, if I have to work something here behind me while I'm trying to talk on the microphone, or I have to tune over here, maybe ergonomically it would be easier for me to kind of rearrange my desktop or however my station is laid out to where, things are within easy reach. The same way with the software, having a good understanding of how the software works makes contesting just fantastic. It's flowing. It almost becomes a second nature to you of doing that. And I really think that there's no in addition to your sitting in the chair during a contest, getting into these contests and learning how the different nuances of the difference between a RTTY contest and a sideband contest might be, because you will kind of move about your station a little bit different based upon on that there. But setting up that software also is really a good way to do that. Scott, you may also want to tell them a little bit about in the software. There are certain things that you really want to do regardless of what kind of contest it is with that software. Things like super check, those types of things, the uploader, because that's what really helps with the not only the camaraderie here in the group, but also just that efficient flow to where it doesn't seem like you're kind of like that one-eyed dog in a meat market. You don't know where to look next of what you want to do. But you want to talk a little bit about some of the nuances of them with the software?
Honestly, I mean, I think it would be better if anyone has questions about the software on the basics, but I'm still feeling like we're getting too deep into the weeds here.
But we were talking about strategy, so that's part of the strategy.
And in terms of time in the chair, and I just wanted to reiterate your and Steve's comments on that. For me, that's something I had to work up to. For me, a full effort is typically maybe 25 hours. That's when I'm bringing it for, out of a 48-hour contest, I'll be in the chair 12, 13 hours Saturday, 12, 13 hours Sunday. And as you guys know, I typically don't start Friday evening. I'll get a good night's sleep and then operate most of the day Saturday, get a good night's sleep Sunday, do it. And that has its own pluses and minuses, which kind of you can get into if you want to. But what I'm getting at is, if you're a new guy and you're just starting out with this, odds are you're not going to be able to sit in front of the radio that long. I couldn't for a while, but the more I got into it and the more I understood the flow of a contest weekend, in terms of, okay, I can expect Europe in the morning on 20, and in the afternoon probably South America, and I need those malts here and I need those malts here. So you kind of know when to be on and what bands to be on, and that it's almost becomes familiar and like the tide, maybe that sounds so goofy, but it's fun and it's reassuring to as you watch the weekend play out. But my point is, when you're starting out, I kind of look at contests. It's exhilarating when we're knocking out cues, 80, 100 cues an hour, especially when everybody's new and we're first starting. But at some point of the contest weekend, it's inevitable. It's a grind. There are times where you can't buy a cue. You just can't find anybody else to work because of conditions or time of day or whatever. And I liken that to a marathon. I can't believe these folks who run 25 miles enjoy every step of that 25 miles. But when they cross that finish line and they've done it and they look back look at that number of QSOs in the log, that is exhilarating. And that's why, at least for me, that's why I'm willing to grind and why I enjoy the grind, because that satisfaction stays with me for weeks afterwards. I mean, it's an accomplishment. But for a new guy, that's something you kind of have to work up to, at least in my opinion.
Dan, one of the things I know that recently you have done is you've changed a few things in your shack as far as setting up for somebody new to contesting. What would you think would be some good points as far as those ergonomics with your station?
Well,
yes.
Go ahead.
Oh, I thought you said Dan. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I did.
I misunderstood. Go ahead.
Okay. So I guess for someone new, it may be a little bit different, but it's the same idea. So I'll answer this in two parts. So with me, I have probably a little bit more than what someone would have starting out brand new, but I don't have like the premier station by any means. But so for me, I originally had, it's hard to really see, but so I originally had like multi-tier risers with one main monitor screen, and I had like a manual tuner, and I had my main rig and everything else, and things were on multiple levels, and of course my amplifiers over here. So I did the Maryland State QSO party over at Bernie's house, and I noticed how nice it was to have everything down on one level right in front of you. And so I changed that, and I got rid of my manual tuner, and I got an automatic tuner, which changed things a lot. Mm-hmm. But I have everything within like eyes reach, and so my eyes don't have to move all that far. So I literally have like 3 points where my eyes move, and it's all within the general vicinity, rather than multiple tiers and a monitor being over here and my amplifier being over here. So that was the main changes that I made. The manual tuner to the automatic tuner was a big change, because when I would go from band to band, like I would go from like 20 meters and I'd jump down to 40, my tuning changed so much. And the roller inductor has, I don't know how many winds it was, but there's a number on there, and it was like 200, it went from 0 to 250. And I know there's not 250 winds, but I mean, I would literally have to probably wind it about 25 times to go one direction, to go from 20 meters down to 40 meters and change the inductance on it. So, I mean, I literally would be sitting there, and my wife would make fun of me because she could hear in the other room, she'd hear this like, and I'd be unwinding and winding it back up, So an automatic tuner just made that much more of a difference, where this automatic tuner by LDG will remember the different solutions that it's made automatically in order to match my different antennas on different bands. So it knows that I have like 3 different solutions on one band, so I can use my Like for instance, I can use my 40-meter dipole, 40 meters, or I can use my inverted L, and it'll keep the different solutions for both. And so it'll try both of them before it even lets me transmit, and it does it automatically. So that cuts down on timing from going from one band to another, or from going from one side of the band to the other. So where 80 meters is pretty big, you know, it's my tuning is going to be different. It keeps all the solutions in there. I don't have to fiddle with my manual tuner. So I made that change. But for, I would say the second part of that is for a new person, is that they're probably going to be using a single rig with an internal tuner, and they'll probably be using a multi-band dipole. What I would probably suggest to them is to have it so that their rig and their keyboard are relatively around the same area. Like where I have my desk here, I guess I can't really move that. I have my desk here. I have like one of those like kind of pull out keyboard touches, you know. I would take that thing right out and I would lay that right on top of the table and put it right in front of your rig. And make sure you have adequate lighting, because you don't want something that's going to strain your eyes or anything else like that, because you're going to want to try and get as much time in the seat as you can. And when you first start off contesting, like Scott said, you're not going to have the endurance to sit in a chair for 6 hours at a time or 12 hours at a time right off the bat, not unless you're weird like Don, who just like picks it up and runs with it. So
he was a glutton for punishment.
That's I mean, he's just weird. But it's great. It's good weird.
Yeah.
I am.
So I would say like I would say that's probably the biggest thing. You also want to find yourself a decent pair of headphones. You don't have to buy Heil Sound right off the bat. Heil Sound makes a good boom mic headphone set. There's also another one here that I use. It's called an INRAD. It's a pretty nice set. It's very comfortable, but you know, you can start out with something like this, which I use for CW contests. And honestly, I got these guys here. It's made by Edifier. I think I got this off a Newegg for like 45 bucks, 40 bucks. And these things are light. They don't cause any type of, you know,
Pressure.
Squeeze.
Yeah, does it pressure and squeeze. And they're really light. So you want something that's going to be light and is not going to bother your ears or make them all hot or pushing the cartilage of your ears. And you want something that sounds decent. And so I would invest in like a light pair, like something like this to start out. You know, you don't need to get top of the line
you could go
stuff.
even cheaper.
Yeah, that's right.
Exactly. Earbuds are the way to go.
I have earbuds. That's what I use in a CW contest is earbuds.
Absolutely. And that's the thing is that I want to say is that you don't have to spend a lot of money to be a contender in a contest. I mean, I had a Shack in the Box radio when I first started out, and I was still doing really well in VHF contest and sideband contest on HF too. So it's not like you have to invest a lot of money. You just have to have
and I think also you want to
rig.
I think you also, you know, we all started somewhere, and your experience and your shack is going to grow over time. You can't, you got to walk before you run, and it's like anything else. You'll probably go through several iterations of various gizmos in the shack until you find what really works. I have to admit, until I started here with the club, I really didn't put ergonomics at the top of my list for the 40 years before that. But then once you start doing some of the things with the club, the contests and this sort of stuff, you soon figure out, you know what, I could make these little small incremental changes, whether it was from an ergonomic standpoint to where it just made more sense of how the fluidity that you do during a contest, or you might sit there, and I know that the next thing you know, I chose to get a wind keyer, save up a little bit of money and get a wind keyer to use as opposed to just the keyer in the rig. And that allowed me to do a few extra little nuances with the software, as well as when I was contesting. So it's those incremental changes that are easy enough to do, and it doesn't have to break the bank as you're doing it. The other thing I would suggest as well is have a reason to contest. And by that, I simply mean this. It doesn't matter what contest that I'm doing, whether it is a big contest or whether it's a state QSO party or if it's a different type of contest, but have a goal. In other words, I often look at my logbook of the world account, my own AC log, and say, you know what? I need a couple more states on 80 meters for worked all states or something along those lines. A lot of times, as part of my prep for any contest, I'll sit there and say, you know what, in this contest, you know what, I still need three states on 40 meters for worked all states on RIDI. Or, you know, so now all of a sudden that adds that extra little bit of a challenge to me in that contest, and makes it a little bit more fun because, you know, there's DXCC that you could strive for, worked all states. There's all different ways of getting worked all states. The WPX contest for worked all prefixes, as well as, like I was saying, the state QSO parties where you're chasing counties as multipliers. So that just kind of adds to the fun of prepping for a contest there. So, Stephen, what do you think from your standpoint there? I know that you've got some ergonomic thoughts as well as the rest of us there on some of those things that might be good for somebody starting out.
Okay.
So, and Paul put a question in the chat too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, let's get to his question first, and then I'll give my thoughts.
Okay. What is the question here?
Paul, you want to ask, or you?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
So I'm sitting here looking at nice faces on my little postage stamp board here, and I'm wondering if there are opportunities to do some of the contesting in person, or is that all shut down with COVID? I'm not sure what the rules of engagement are.
Well, that's a good question. All of us are frustrated, I'm sure, from Paul. There is one thing that we usually always did, regardless of where we were, and that is called Field Day. That's usually the last weekend in June, and clubs usually got together, and oftentimes it was out somewhere else, whether it was at a park or on top of a mountain or something like that, and they put stations together and worked that Saturday and Sunday event together. Of course, COVID really kind of knocked a lot of that in the head. At least for a while, they made some changes to where this past time, and I think they're also going to be doing that for Field Day. It's an ARRL event. They're going to allow us to do it from home, that we can still compete and it's more of an event. It's not a contest per se, but we can share our scores together from home, and the software allows us to do that as well. So that's one thing. I don't know about you. Our club is still meeting virtually once a month on Discord. We all hate it equally. Because it's not the same thing as being there. But I will say this, whether or not you've been contesting for 20 years or whether you've been contesting for 3 months or a month, the way we do it here with NEMARCs is a blast. I can't say that enough, how much fun we all have together. And a lot of us are far apart, but you wouldn't think it, because we do take advantage of every opportunity we can to be together, and we've kind of morphed with the technology, haven't we?
Right, and we should stress that even though we operate from our individual shacks, we're all on Discord all weekend. We're banter, as you get time between contacts or slow periods, we're banter, helping each other out with questions, and just it is a group experience, even though that we're in our individual homes.
Paul, I think I would say, and this really has a bit to do with contest strategy, really, is that it's common that we haven't been able to get together, and I've missed that too. I've been a ham for about a year, and so I've had very little in-person contact with most of the folks here, but typically before a contest, we'll have a practice session. And sometimes it may depend a little bit on the mode. For RTTY, there's always a practice session, and that's a chance for people to kind of get together, make sure that they have the right contest software downloaded, and working with their rig. It's a chance to really talk about strategy, for people to talk about what they're going to do during the contest and how they're going to make cues. So it's definitely, I think that even though there hasn't been much in person, it really couldn't be much better than what we do here on Zoom and with Discord. There's really been a good effort on the part of the club to be as in person as they can without actually being in person.
Can we, for the new guys, Chris and Bob, Steve, Rich, are we on the right track with the kind of what we're talking about here? Do we need to maybe take it a little forward, or just stop and take some questions? Or
yeah, I think we should see if anybody has any questions. I mean, I just wanted to add, because I'm new to contesting, and one of the things that I thought was kind of funny that Steve said, wasn't funny, Steve, or Spence, I'm sorry, Spence, but was you mentioned about the ergonomics of a station, and figuring out what works. And for me, it was figuring out what doesn't work, because it doesn't work right before a contest, and never do an upgrade to a software.
Right.
Don't do a firmware update on your radio right before a contest.
Oh, that's huge. Yep, absolutely.
And if you feel compelled to do something right before a contest, vacuum your shack. Don't do anything else.
Well,
I've got one more. Change the battery in your keyboard and mouse.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've got one more. I have a book here that I call the WT8WV Book of All Knowledge, and I write literally. I'm just that crazy enough to where I write down stuff, and this honest to God happened, and Don will certify that it did. We're getting ready to do the RIDI contest. Now, we don't do RIDI contests every day, and so a month or two might go by before I switch modes and have to kind of get reset up there. And our setups are pretty much really easy to do on that, but for some reason, an hour before the contest starts, I'm not transmitting. And I'm like, oh no. And I get on Discord and get a hold of Don and said, Don, I need to. So we ended up putting a phone call together there, because I knew he had a 7300 like I did there, and we're going down through the different settings. And all it was I don't know how I did it, but I had toggled something off that didn't need to be toggled off. So yeah, the practice sessions need to go on before, a half an hour before game time, probably to prep to do that. But that it always helps to take notes there. Like I say, for every mode, I've got my book of all knowledge here that I sit there and put my stuff in that I can refer to. Stephen, what were you getting ready to say about some ergonomics in the shack?
Okay, well, first thing is, before I even say anything, you know exactly what I'm going to refer to is this.
Chair. Need a chair. Good chair.
Very important.
Nice.
I know Don can attest to that.
Yep.
It's a tiny little
wooden stool.
Ergonomically molded stool.
Don started his hobby with an Amish milking stool.
Yeah, it's like an Irish
milking stool,
or like an Irish pub stool or something.
Yeah, but see, most people will know that's a gamer's chair. Okay, so what this thing forces you to do is to sit upright like this. Okay, and then obviously you got your support up here, and then there's lumbar support down here too. And since if you're going to be sitting for multiple, this is not even just for contesting. This is even just for just sitting here and operating. Because if you do a ride chew, you can ride chew for hours too. And I know from my teenage years when I did that. Well, okay. The way I had my station set up when I was a teenager was my HF rig was on my nightstand, and I sat on my bed. Right. So you could imagine me sitting on my bed like this, tapping CW and and on my little Mac Plus, I was doing packet radio on the screen that's only about this big. So you see, so I'm kind of like look at the screen, when I'm doing packet or radio or one of the digital modes. Okay, so that's the first example. Obviously, you can see. Now, if you have the room, go for a dual or 3 monitor setup. That's very important. Now, if you're like me and don't have the room for more than 1 monitor, get the biggest monitor you can. I have a 27-inch 4K monitor that's serving that purpose behind. I'm looking at you guys right now. But before that, I had a 24 1080p monitor, and it served its purpose okay. But with the 4K, I have more real estate. I just have to adjust the scaling so that way I'm not looking at microscopic letters. And once you get all that set up, you can put more stuff on the screen with what you have. Like I don't have. I wish I could put another 27-inch monitor next to it, but I don't have the room for that. So that's so if you're I know like especially if I'm doing any RIDI work, I would like to have, if I'm doing RIDI contests, I would like to have the contest software and the RIDI software where I both can see them. So that way, when I'm logging from the RIDI screen, it's transferring over. Before that, I had one window at a time, and so when you log something, you don't know if you logged it or not if you don't see it. So if you can put both programs in the same view, you can, as you're doing the logging and the whatever, you can see it sync, making sure it syncs properly. So that's the other thing right there too. And you want to minimize your movement of your head. And I sometimes I know it's, I know in normal operations, like you're doing, when I was doing traffic handling and just doing regular de-expedition hunting and stuff like that, you could afford that ability to to basically not be all tensed up. But the serious contest can tell you right now, every second counts.
Yep.
So you take that 1 second and you're doing something repetitively, multiply that by whatever, insert a number that you think that. I mean, my suggestion is when you operate for 1 minute, count how many times you do it, and then multiply that, and you can see exactly how much time gets wasted.
Well, I know that one of the things that Scott told us a bunch of times early on was you'll hear people say, please copy. This will be in that exchange. All right. Number one, or they'll say 73. I get it in normal conversation, that's fine. But you sit there and say, please copy over the course of a 48-hour contest or a 24-hour contest. All of a sudden, when you sit there and say, okay, well, that's 2 seconds times 1,000 contacts, it might be 15 minutes of contact time that you've lost by just those little things. Yeah, that's right.
Now, I have a document from one of the very well-known contesters. He wrote a little document for I belong to the Long Island CW Club, and we have a lot of beginners on there. And he actually wrote and ever since the K1 USN the slow speed sprint, I forget what the contest, you have a lot of newcomers to it. So he wrote up a document basically explaining strategies and etiquette for contesting. I think it's K6RA his call is, and I think I posted. I think
you posted on NEMARC, or I did see it somewhere.
I don't think I forwarded it on. I don't think I've sent it on I don't think I've sent it to the email group, but I think I posted on Discord. I should go on to LICW and see if I can find it. I know they have the document stored in their repository, so maybe if I can, go steal it, and I'll send it out on the email group. It's very good reading, and he describes it. He basically describes it for the beginner, but I think a lot of seasoned people can read it too and learn a few things. To be honest with you.
Right.
Sure.
Now, are there any other questions here that we could field for either Bob or Steve or Rich? Paul, do you have anything, or Chris?
I'm just going to say, hey, it's winter time, and as spring approaches,
Mm-hmm.
and as we pass our tests and get our licenses or study more and upgrade, it's a great time to start putting together a basic station. Yeah. And all along the way, the guys here in NEMARC on Discord or whatever will be around to help answer questions. You have to consider where you live and what kind of space you have for antennas. What kind of antenna can you put up? What location will you find in your home that you can set up a station? I mean, my station right now, I'm down in the basement, and my cable is only 4 feet wide. I did post a picture of my station basically there on Discord. I do have a couple levels, but the things I need most are on one level. The things that are on the top level are like my antenna rotors and stuff that I don't have to fiddle with during the course of the contest. So everything is pretty close by. But, you know, that's the time to be thinking about, you know, just getting a basic station together and getting on the air. And once you get on the air, you know, then you can start thinking, well, these contest things, you know, and
once you start having fun, it builds its own momentum.
Right now, I have an 80-meter double bazooka for 80 meters. And the thing is cut right in the middle of the band, which absolutely sucks when you try to tune it down in this low end of the band, the CW band. So what I have here is my winter project. This is an 80-meter inverted, that will be an inverted V, cut long. And I'm going to have my antenna tuner out in the spring, and I'm going to tune that sucker right around 3.4 or something like that. So I don't have to tune it whenever I get down in the CW portion. I can move up and down the CW portion of the band. Now, I learned that because my 80-meter performance in contests wasn't what I wanted, simply because I had to take more time to tune, et cetera, et cetera. So that's that project. And that's the kind of stuff you learn in contesting as you go along. You know, you look at what you got and what you want and what you can do and just improve. And
yeah, and I would also like to add that, and I'm just and a bunch of guys know that I've learned this in the past few months, is that if you do, and you need to look at your time too and see what times you can actually sit down without being interrupted. For me, it would be the evening hours after 7:30. Sure. However, I did not have the proper antenna for the nighttime bands, which is 40, 80, and 160. So basically, when the night came, I count myself out of the competition because I just did not have the proper equipment. So you have to look at that too. So because once I put up the right antenna for the low bands, all of a sudden, as the guys can tell you, I literally doubled my score. You know, just casually. I wasn't even trying. So yeah. Something to think about.
Yeah, as a contest will reveal that very quickly. Hey, I'm doing really well in this band, but something this needs work, and that as you have fun with it, that motivates you to try to improve. And it's continuous improvement for all of us. We're all trying to get better.
And the skills you learn. I mean, here's the thing: not everybody's gonna like it. Not everybody likes contesting, but the one thing that you learn from trying it is the purpose of the contest. Ever since the inception of it, 6,000 years ago, is it teaches you about propagation. It teaches you about the strengths and weaknesses of your station. That's its main purpose. I mean, a bunch of us are never going to get any awards or anything like that, like the multi-million-dollar stations that you see advertised and everything. Yeah, I wish I had all those plaques hanging on my wall too. I'm sure all of us do too. But and every time this gets asked on the email groups of the other clubs I belong to, they said, what is the value of a contest for a non-contester? And the answer is, I had that email just up not too long ago. Basically, what I just reiterated is your strengths and weaknesses, propagation times, and
and it's going to make you a better operator, whether you want to be a contester or not. Just you're going to learn to hear better and pick out things better, and you're going, as you say, you're going to know
and if you're in a pileup, you learn the skills of trying to beat everybody. Having the most power isn't always going to win. You have where's that saying comes from? You can't outrun them, but you can outsmart them, and that's what you have to do.
Yeah.
I think something to add quickly, and it's a huge a topic that you really get lost in too, is the propagation piece. Because I know, like, contesters chase I know DXers and whatever, they chase the gray line, and for a long time I quite never completely understood what that meant. I'm chasing the QTH of the stations along the gray line, or am I how far from the gray line? And so I know that for me was like, for a while, I don't know, it was a concept I just couldn't wrap my head around. It just wasn't explained in a way that I could really digest it. And then especially with the I think antenna and propagation is probably the biggest part for me doing this, because the CW contest, I have 100 watts, and that's and I didn't even use that most of the time. Of course, I didn't make very many contests because I was still trying to figure everything out at the last minute. But I just, like, maybe I don't know if Bob or Rich or Paul have any other questions. But the propagation piece, I think, is could be something to discuss too. Just a thought.
I agree. I think that your conversation about propagation, that came to me after a while. I mean, I'd always heard about it, but the more and more you do some of these contests, and it doesn't matter how long that you're doing these contests, you will figure out real quick that what time of day where your chances are going to be better, probably, as far as what frequencies to be on. We kind of joke around that early in the morning on a Saturday or Sunday morning, the Breakfast Club gets together about between 5 and 5:30 in the morning. And not only are we usually fresh and having our coffee, but at the same time, that's one of the best times to start picking up some of those Australian and New Zealand contacts, because that's where that propagation gray line is at that time of day for us. It's a little different for the Japan, and we were discussing that among some of us just the other day here on Discord. But you learn those things, and all of a sudden it just almost becomes again second nature. Is that when you're in this contest, it's 5 o'clock, I better start at least taking a look to see what's on 80 meters here, or those types of things. So you'll really get a chance to learn about propagation in a contest big time.
And in terms of contest strategy, you want to be on when Europe is on. There's a lot of guys over there to work and to get cues in your log. And that's typically in the morning to midday or just after midday on 20, 15, and 10. And then you start working them on 40 late afternoon and a little bit later at 80 and 160 into the night.
And just to add for the newer folks, I got my license in 1992. And I'm still trying to figure out how things work.
Yeah, well,
yep, I was a ham since January in 1992, and out of the 29 years that I've been licensed, I've been active about half of that, and the other half that I wasn't active was because it was the I'm sure we've all been through that time where we're trying to find out what we want to do in life when we grow up, and
right.
And that involved me moving around moving from one place to another, and so. But
well, and the other thing too is I think Scott alluded to it a little bit earlier. Do not be surprised. Because I know most of the guys that are on this screen, do not be surprised if your antenna situation doesn't change on a regular basis, because
we're always trying to make it better.
That's exactly right. Everybody is trying to do something to get that little extra edge there, to experiment, to figure out what works.
Here's a quick example: 40-meter dipole. We're in a pretty enviable position for Europe, because in the late afternoon, we're the first guys that can start to work Europe before Midwest. So we kind of have a monopoly for a period of time on that. Even so, I didn't have a dipole oriented to radiate directly northeast, and I would do okay with that. But after I put one up specifically for Europe in mind, I feel like, I can hang with just about anybody on that band. I see a spot for Europe from mid-afternoon on and 40 on. I have high degree of confidence I can knock that guy out real quick. And the idea is to get that way on all the bands and at various levels and various bands, but you find ways to give yourself an edge.
Yeah.
It's really been very motivational to me with Scott and Steve and Dan and really Steve and everybody and I think Spence has set the best example of all with using one G5 RV and not a lot of watts and making a lot of contacts in a contest. But I'm going to try the next to emulate Steve and Gary with their L antennas and see if I can improve my ability to get into Europe on the 40 and 80 and potentially 160. And so this is partly motivated by wanting to do better in contests. And it's also part of the ham radio experience too, in terms of learning about antennas and trying new stuff. I can tell you it can be a little bit frustrating if you're in a contest and you're looking at the leaderboard and you're watching the other guys make cues at a rate that's twice what you are, and you realize it's probably, among other things, your antenna that's holding you back when you're
mostly the antenna
doing that. But in terms of again of strategies, Spence, because I am thinking about strategy. We did talk a little bit about logging software, and this is for the new guys, about N3FJP logging software, and maybe even for the old guys. But we keep a contest. If you use Scott software, we keep a leaderboard, and on that leaderboard is a lot of information. Mm-hmm. By each person who's participating in that contest. You can see an overall list of who's in the contest, how many points they've scored, and you can click on each individual. And you can click on that individual and you can see the last 10 contacts that they've made. And I don't know that I've been taking full advantage of the fact that that information is there, because if somebody's doing well in the contest, it's probably a good idea to look at where they're making contacts at that particular time. So
if you see somebody with a high rate, you look at what band they're on, and
right.
That's a good indicator.
Well, I would say conversely too, is that it also kind of occupy your mind, and sometimes I try not to go there because there could be somebody that's ahead of me and they're really getting my goat, and I have to go and click on them and see where they're at and see what their multipliers are. And I'm like, why is their multipliers rate so much higher?
Right.
And why are they how are they getting all these mults and all this other thing? And then instead of doing that, I could be operating and actually improving my own score. I find myself doing that. So there is a kind of a balance that you need to achieve.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many,
but it's fun.
I can't tell you how many posts I've ignored on Discord during the
yeah.
If you notice, Tom, since I started with NEMARC, which is about a year and a half ago, Tom has been awfully quiet on Discord since from the advent of me joining until like now, because like now he's like, you don't hear from him. Yeah. He's like on a mission to just like wipe everybody out. Like he's like world domination.
Yeah. He's got his foot on your throat and he's not letting up. Well, I do think also if there is one piece of advice that we could probably give anybody getting into the either into the hobby or into contesting, dollar for dollar. And I know that Scott, you've told me this before, dollar for dollar, antennas. If you are going to invest, now it's tempting to invest in an amplifier. It's tempting to invest in this little gizmo or that little gizmo. Dollar for dollar, the best thing that you can do is work on that antenna system, because that's the great equalizer, really.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, so Rich, I'm sorry, go ahead.
It can be the cheapest.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, so Rich has a really good question. Once we wrap.
I'm sorry, I keep.
No, that's fine. Keep going, but he's got a good question after we wrap this point.
Okay. Okay. The question is, how can you explain how spotting works in the software?
Yeah, I can do that.
That's a great idea, Scott. This is right up your alley.
All right, let me go ahead and do that. So hopefully you're seeing my screen.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So, all right. So real quickly, I have rig interface enabled, and that was one of the must-haves. Which with the modern rigs, it's just plugging in a cable that you don't even need to buy any extra hardware other than a USB cable. So I have rig interface set up. I'm reading the frequency from my ICOM. As you can see, I'm on 7.055. And if I turn the VFO, then that updates to my new frequency. That also appears on the main form. So, okay, I just see I need Ukraine here on 80 meters. So I click on it. Now, boom, I'm on 80 meters. I've got the call. Now, already in the call field, the software has already looked up the zone and the country. So if I work the guy, and if I hit spacebar, that fills the received and sent. So by clicking on the call, all I have to do is press spacebar once. If I get him, I hit enter. And yeah, so it minimizes.
Oh, the other thing you missed, Scott, it changed bands from 40 to 80 meters.
Right. So, okay, say I get that guy, and I need Venezuela. So I click on Venezuela, and I'm back on 40, and the same deal.
And then Scott can spot that last station.
Yes, and in fact, you can set the software to
spot on entry.
So you spot on entry, and also you can jump to the next spot. So if I were to press enter for this guy, here I'm going to disable. Let's see, I'm going to disable spot on entry because I don't want
that's spot on entry when it goes in the log.
Yes,
that's correct.
Right. Here, let me. So let me open a test log here real quick. Rather than mess with that. So okay. Where am I? So if I press enter, I'm on 7.110. I work this guy. I press enter, and the software immediately jumps to the next spot, which is up here, EA8RH. It's already pre-filled for me. So I'm hitting enter. The software, which, all the little things that we're talking about add up. Instead of having to press enter, reach over to the mouse, click on the next spot, we those couple seconds where I wonder if where maybe that guy was calling CQ and you missed the CQ if you had to reach over to your mouse, the automatic jumping is huge. But I don't know if you need any information on actually setting up DX spotting, but basically you click enable DX spots, and you can then filter. Like, in this case, I've got no filter, but I typically filter just for our continent. So spots, Europe spotting somebody doesn't help us if their propagation's not coming over here. So I want spots from the United States. The other thing, Spence, you asked before, and I got sidetracked about super check partial. What super check partial does is it's a list. Let's see, settings. Super check partial. There's right now 34,709 active contesters, and you can just click to download the latest and enable it. And what that does, it's just a list of all known contesters. So if I hear W3J, and I think that's an X, and okay, yeah, see, it's well, here I'm pointing on the screen, but so it's telling me that, hey, there is a W3JX who's a known contester. If I thought it was a J or a JJ, it's not there. So I'm thinking, I've got to look a little more closely. But
this is helpful to me, Scott.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
Thank you.
So let's see, what else can I show you on that? So look, even Mr. FT8 Bernie is a known contester.
Yep.
So don't let him tell you he's not a contester.
Scott, why don't you go back? One thing I would like to show them, go back to where you're setting DX spotting up and go to the second screen, please.
Sure. I can't show you my keyboard, but if you want to hop to the next spot, you just can Control Shift Z, and the software just popped. I don't know if you saw it. So right now it's on the VY6CB.
Where you see that little red square is where you are.
That's my frequency. Yeah.
That's right.
So with just the key, I try not to have any mouse grabs, or I minimize the mouse grabs. And again, as far as just any eye movements, try to minimize it. I know it doesn't sound like much, but in addition to head, just the eye movements over the course of 24, 25 hours, you start to get a headache and all that. But if you kind of keep everything right there, it's a really big help. So sure, Spence, we'll go to the more filtering.
More filtering. One of the things that I will do there, I want to block, if it's a phone contest, I want to block CW and block digital, because I only want to see what I'm going after. Right. The one up above that in the white box that's open there, I usually put a 3 and an 8. The reason being is I don't care if somebody in California, a 6, spots something. I'm not in California. Chances are I might not hear it. I'll put a 3 and an 8 because that means I'm here on the Mason-Dixon line. I'm going to hear what you guys are spotting in 3 land in Pennsylvania. And West Virginia.
If there's plenty of spots, that's good. But there are times where you're going to want to clear that, because we're digging for those cues, and you might hear that guy that the 6 spotted, and you want that to show up. Here's another
block duplicates too. Is the other
block
thing
duplicates you definitely want, because what that does, and any new call sign that shows up is a call you have not worked, so that it's somebody you can go get. One thing that I don't typically use, but I did use this past weekend, was this block spots not in the super check partial. Guys, spots typically towards the end of contests, the guys are tired, they're miscopying and fat fingering, and there's some bad spots. But this contest, it got bad right from the start, to the point where I was clicking on spot after spot that was just a bad call. So by selecting this, what that does, it hurts me in the sense that I'm not able to get some new contesters, and there's always new ones. There will be guys that you work that are not in the super check partial list, but the other side of it is it does filter out any of those, or most of those misposted calls.
Is this for the other folks that are joining us? Is this a lot to absorb?
It is, but actually, I mean, it's a lot of stuff that having done that, listen along with you guys in the CW one. Now I explain how people can pull out those calls so quickly. Right? If you already know the first couple.
Right. CQ Worldwide in particular. Okay, I work this guy, right? So I press enter. Press spacebar, press enter. He's in the log, and I'm on to the next guy, and I already know what his call is supposed to be. So I'm expecting, as he calls, as he's running a frequency, I'm expecting to hear 9 Mike 2 Z Alpha Kilo. I hear that, so I hit the F key to send mine, and if he comes back, I hit spacebar, I hit enter, and I'm on to the next guy. So now I'm ready for J8. So you don't have to be great at CW to search and pounce these CW contests. It's already pre-filled for you.
Yep.
Right.
And I think you'll find awesome. that as for the guys that aren't contesting or just started, and as you get more into it, you may want to watch this video again, because there may be something that was touched on and you're like, oh, and you have a couple aha moments out of it, because right now it doesn't really translate as well as it does if you've done like 4 or 5 contests with us,
Now, Paul, I know that you're getting ready to take your test this coming weekend, and so now you've you've got a little taste of what might possibly interest you here in the future with this crew, I can tell you that it's a lot of fun. You'd set your expectations reasonably. Contesting is a lot of fun, but you can ease into it and figure out what you can do. And, there's always a balance between real life and ham life and that. But on the weekends, we tend to like to spend whatever little bit of time we can together here. But we hope that you'll get the contest bug like everybody else gets every once in a while and that. But what are some of your interests at this point?
Well, I'll tell you, I'd like to learn more about the screens that I just saw, and if that's what is that that CW contesting that Steve was talking about, or is he over there, doing a key?
So are you referring to the screens I was showing here or something
Yes.
else? Yeah.
Yes.
So actually, as it turns out, I happen to write this stuff. I've been writing amateur radio software since 1997, and I make this free. You get let me know when you get your call sign, and I will happily send along everything you need to use this. We use this for single sideband and CW contests. And
also general logging.
And I have general logging. So typically there are some contests that are mixed mode. Most contests are single mode contests. So on a CW weekend, you just select CW. If it's the SSB weekend, you select SSB. But this is the program. This is an example of the program you would use either way. I have a bunch of contest specific applications. They all have their own nuances. This one, for example, has the countries and the zones. Others might be stateside oriented, where you're working sections. There's a contest called November Sweepstakes where you try to work all 84 sections and they change color and work. It's different. Each one kind of interacts with you and what you want to see during the contest. But anyway, I've got the whole. There's
a ton of YouTube videos out there too on using the N3FJP software. There's a number of videos that you can access right off the site, right, Scott?
Oh, sure. Yeah. If you go to n3fjp.com, feel free to you can go download anything you want. And like I say, as soon as it's just the only reason we're waiting is I need your call sign to do the registration piece. But you download Amateur Contact Log is the general logging program, and then the rest are contest specific applications.
Yeah, I don't want to hog the net here, but one more.
I
live here in the IHG hotel on Aberdeen Proving Ground, so I can't just go, hang an antenna up off the roof. So maybe there's an internet access where I can participate in some of this just through the web.
Well, you can certainly watch the spotters when we're not the spotter, but the what we call the uploader, which is our live scoring. It's kind of live event scoring, things like that, even if you can't get on the radio.
And there are some options. I think I know some. I mean, there's hams are, if anything, very creative and resourceful. And I've seen some folks use their rain gutter on their apartment complex as an antenna before.
I've done it.
Yeah, there's you can get a loop. I know some people, if you have a balcony, they'll run loops on them. I mean, there's a lot of. It's not always the easiest way, but there are possibilities too.
You can even run remote.
Right.
If you're really frisky.
And also don't forget that there's, in a lot of like contests, like state contests and things like that, or even VHF contests, you can do what's called roving, which is probably not the most optimal thing to do right off the bat if you're new to contesting, but you can do that. And roving would be basically you bring your portable equipment out and you set up somewhere in a park somewhere and
or in a car.
Or in a car, and just operate portable for a couple hours one place, maybe go to another place and operate another place, So
you make a multiplier too, I think, right?
Yeah,
it does. Yeah, and actually,
get everybody coming after you.
Yeah, rovers are highly sought after, especially in VHF contests.
Yeah.
So there's definitely some options there. you may want to consider getting a loop, like the guy said, like a mag loop, put out on your balcony. Those are great, especially for like digital contests and CW contests, because they're really super quiet. They may not be the most, I don't have a lot of experience with them, but from what I understand, they may not be the most efficient antenna for sideband, but I know that they do very well in CW and digital.
Yeah, I was just watching some videos of MFJ loop yesterday, and one of the only issues that the guys who are running it found that it wouldn't tune on low in 40 meters. So other than that, they found it was a really great antenna for noise and everything else. And then in confined spaces, and the one guy was operating at 8 feet off the ground on a 2x4. So it's there are options. And then
I wonder, Paul, that brings up another point too, is that if you are constrained with those type of constraints, you may want to consider a rig that you can bring on the road with you too, that you can take somewhere with you. Because a lot of times I know a lot of guys that I know that will actually rent a cabin for a weekend and contest from a cabin, so you may want to, where a 7610 is a really big radio and is very nice, you may want to get something that's a little bit more portable too, that you can keep in your place, use a mag loop, but then also take it out on the road with you too.
I'm gonna say I took my 7300 out to the Mojave Desert to visit the kids and used it out there for 2 weeks.
It's a great.
I keep my 7300 in the the case when I operate portable. So
I just checked it through as I carried it on as a carry-on, but I had a small suitcase that I could carry on, and I had it foamed and that sort of stuff in there, and took it out.
Now, since we were just talking about mag loops, the one thing that's very important is that they're not designed for high power. So you want to read the specs on it before you make a purchase on something like that, if you choose to go that route.
Define high power at this point as well.
Like a lot of times, mag loops were mostly. I don't have much, I don't really have experience with mag loops, but a lot of times for the size, depending on how much you want to operate, 100 watts might be a little too much for a mag loop in many cases. So
you would back it off and maybe run.
You have to back it off. I know a lot of QRP guys. Like I know, like the ICOM 705. A lot of the ones a lot of the operators that use that radio have mag loops. I mean, the 705 only puts out 10 watts.
Steve, do they use transformers in those things?
It's some kind of device. Like I know it's because I know there's the loop and then there's that little circle thing.
Inside they have. I just saw the video yesterday. They have like the fins, and they actually move. And then there's it comes with its own I guess power supply. The MFJ does anyway, and
I think it's got
so it's got a capacitance then,
tuning is really slow. It takes
tuning capacitor, and it's very narrow. I know that too. It's very narrow.
So this fins that come together like that's capacitance. So I'll change capacitance as it moves.
Yeah. Hey, this is Rich. That actually was my only antenna up until 2 days ago when I got my 40-meter dipole in the air. But
nice.
Yeah, no, they're.
Rich, you probably know more about it than we do.
Yeah, really.
Yeah, so it's. I mean, I just ran. I mean, I did the radio contest. I only got like 70 something views, but I just ran it out of my the spare bedroom, so I just stuck it in there. So but it's so depending on where you're at, I mean, it's very narrow band. So you have to manually tune it if you change more than, say, like at 40, you've changed more than, say, 20, 30 kilohertz, you have to retune it by hand, and actually after a while you get really good at it, so you can all you do is listen to the noise floor, and you can pretty much get it close, and then I tune quick at low power, and then see what your SWR is, right? So, or if you have a tuner, but
I'm never complain about a manual tuner again.
Yeah, no. So if it's good for digital. If you're going to sit there at like 774 or whatever, right, and just do FT8, it's probably, you don't have to touch it, right? But but if it's not a contesting antenna in general, I would say, right? Because if you have it outside, you have to keep running back and forth. And but you can, I mean, it's and the other thing you said about low power is true too. So usually SSB is anywhere from 50 to 100 watts, and then if you're doing full digital modes, it's more like 10 to 25 watts. And you're right, there's if I understand, is some sort of worm drive, like a 61 worm drive, into some sort of set of capacitive plates that go past each other, and that's what the tuning element is. But it's narrow band. But I was working France with it. I was working Europe with it from my living room. It's like 1 meter piece of wire,
and
cable.
Since it's very narrow band, a lot of the energy is concentrated where it's tuned too. So that's why you when you see a lot of videos with the mag loops on people's balconies, and they're making contacts with very little power. I know, like the Alex loop is a very popular one, and I think the maximum wattage you can run at, I think it's like 30 to 40 watts. So, but especially if you're on digital, most people on digital not really running that much on there.
Well, no wonder it's so quiet then, because I mean, if it's so narrowbanded, it's almost like its own filter.
Yeah, I guess that's the way to look at it.
I can tell you. I mean, I can tell you right now, a loop in general, because I use most of these guys know I use a receive only loop on the lower bands, and it definitely does a wonderful job of getting rid of noise, especially on 40, 80, and 160. I mean, I did a little demonstration for some of the guys, and you can see the huge difference in this past contest, especially when the band was starting to open up, the signals were barely moving the meter. If I didn't have the receive loop, I would not hear them. But with the receive loop, I heard them, and they heard me. So that tells me that it's definitely an awesome compliment to it too. And the reason why I have that receive loop, and this is and the reason why is because during Contest University there was a webinar about receive antennas. A lot of the big guys, if they have the room, use beverage antennas and stuff like that. And they also described the receive loop, and if I didn't see that seminar, if I didn't see that contesting seminar, I would have never even thought about it. But yeah, one of the best things you can possibly get if you can do it.
Rich, what you did is very much in the spirit of competition and the spirit of what it takes to get better. And you've already demonstrated, you had a loop, and you've made an incremental improvement to go to your V. And I think everybody here, it's a lot about incremental improvements. That's what I've done here, is made incremental improvements to my shack and to everything that's going on. And it's exciting to hear that you used a loop to participate in your first contest here.
Heck yeah.
And another great example is Don, when in a recent contest, we had multipliers based on the number of contacts on different modes and bands, and Don's out there in a snowstorm with an antenna on a stick. We're trying to make a contact on 440. He's out on his deck in a snowstorm, and we made the contact. But that's all part of what we're about. Anything for that cue.
Absolutely. Well, and I also think, Rich, from the standpoint, okay, you know what you did in this last contest. Now you take the knowledge you gained there and build on that to see what you can do incrementally this next time. I know that's the way it was there. I used to sit there and think when I first started, man, if I could make 100 contacts, that would be cool. Well, the next thing you know, I made 100 contacts. I'm like, holy crap, I didn't realize I could do that. Well, the next thing you know, it's like, I wonder if I can do 150. Well, I tell you, once you, like you say, you get a little experience, you get a little bit of time in the chair, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 700 contacts is not out of the realm. And I'm just using a G5 RV. I know that there are limitations to it, but I kind of, like I say, that when I set my goals for each contest, I'm setting those goals based on what I know my equipment can and cannot do.
And what you can and cannot do.
Well, that's right. And a lot of it just turns into time in the chair. And that time is something we all only have a finite amount of there. And sometimes we feel good, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we have family obligations that take a little bit of priority. So like I say, set reasonable goals is one of the things that I've always tried to do to maximize my enjoyment. If I know I can only put 5 hours in, okay, I might not like the idea I can only do 5 hours, but okay, what can I do in that time?
And never misunderstand our fun banter for pressure in the club. We appreciate every cue.
Absolutely.
And we're like, yeah, we're rooting each other on, and come on, we can make it to this number. But it's in a context of fun and of encouragement, and we totally understand where, if you've had enough, you get up. If you've got like obligations, you get up, and it's all good. There is no pressure here whatsoever.
Absolutely.
I'll say this too, that so I sat down. I probably said this a couple times, so sorry for the guys that have to hear this part again. But so I was able to sit down at a speaker. This guy, his name is Bud Trench, and he's probably one of the biggest and best contesters on the East Coast. I mean, this guy is absolutely insane, but super down to earth guy. But I mean, the guy's, if you look him up, his call is Alpha 3 Bravo, and he's probably one of the most accomplished ops that I know. But he sat down, he said there's two things to contesting. He goes, first, you have to make goals, and your goals should be about your own personal goals. It shouldn't be, I need to beat this person or I need to do this. Your goal should be, I want to have X amount of contacts during this contest, or I want to make sure that I get 3 hours of good solid contacts on the West Coast at this time and do this, or like just set out your own personal goals. Look at your goals. Look at what you did last year. Look at the things that you did last time that you competed in this thing, and always set out your goals based on that, on your own personal passions and own personal things. He said another thing is, especially, and this is with HF contesting, because there's also VHF contesting with a completely different thing, is an HF contesting, you always want to be on the highest band you possibly can. So if they're starting an opening on 15, go jump on 15, because you want to take advantage of that, because there's your multipliers. So be on the highest band you possibly can, set your personal goals beforehand, and see them through.
Good stuff.
Does Bob want to chime in?
I think what 3JX was saying earlier too is if you set those goals, you might have to set your food. There's things that you may need to take care of to help you meet those goals. If you're going to sit down in your chair and you want to spend your whole weekend, there's not just that preparing yourself mentally for that, but all the other things that have to happen to allow you to do that.
Yep.
Right down to when you're going to eat and what you're going to eat. And a lot of times.
Yeah, Steve prepares all his meals in advance, so he can just pop them in the microwave.
I mean, seriously, I'll make a whole sandwiches. Yeah, or I made a whole crock pot full.
Actually, if I'm going to give a full effort,
my wife
actually write down a schedule.
Yeah.
I'm going to work this, then I'm going to sleep, then I'm going to get up, and then I'm going to work, and then I'm going to sleep, and then I get up through the content. I mean, I actually have a schedule I stick to.
Mm-hmm.
But most contests now, I'm not looking for there will never be an SSB concert or a contest where I'm going to go full blast. I mean, I'll just get in for fun. And actually, some of the things now that you can do with contests is it's just a good way to pick up new country,
Absolutely.
pick up new contacts and stuff.
Well, I'm going to say, Steve, I agree with you. I can remember in just that first DX contest that I did, and I think it was a sideband contest. I'll guarantee you, in the course of a weekend, I picked up 60 countries.
Yeah,
you can do that with CW as well.
And when we have some spots, you'll pick up 100.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And for the younger guys, I mean, this year I'll be 50 years a ham. 1971. 73 years old. I've always had a competitive streak in me, but right now, if I went outside and got down in a 3-point stance and take off, both hammies would be gone by the 4th step. Okay, And, you know, I can still play golf, but it's something that, one, keeps me young because I'm with a group of younger people. Mm-hmm. Two, I always thought a Raspberry Pi was something you ate until I met Stephen, and now I understand there's another kind of Raspberry Pi. Even though I don't have one, I know what it is, and I learned that here. This is a hobby that it's not like stamp collecting because you reach out and touch other people. It's a hobby that's going to keep my brain active for as long as it remains active. Mm-hmm. And as long as I'm working on my radio, talking to people, getting into these chat rooms, getting on Zoom with you guys, I will continue to be stimulated by the experiences that you've had, and I will incorporate them into my hobby.
Absolutely.
So, you know, I look at it that way.
There are studies that have actually been done that, you know, especially people that are retiring or getting ready to retire or are retired, that mental acuity, if you're not keeping your mind occupied, if you know that it's the old, you know, if you don't use it, you lose it type of situation. So I agree with you. I think that this is one particular hobby that the learning never stops. And I love that part. I love that part.
And you engage with people the entire time.
Right. And the other studies that you see will say if you're connected with a group, you have that longevity, and I mean, we're all brothers here, and we're pulling for each other. We're an amateur radio family. We love each other, and we try to help each other in the best ways we can, even though we try to crush each other on contest weekend.
Absolutely.
I hate them on a weekend.
Yeah,
I hope their cat dies.
I can tell you right now, I'm probably.
You guys are all scum to be rolled over. And
oh my God!
Throw dirt over them or whatever it takes.
I can tell you right now, I'm probably the biggest introvert that's here. So, you know, so to me, that's probably one of the reasons why I came back is because this is the perfect introvert hobby. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know,
that's a good point.
And that's the guy that hung 500 contacts last weekend too.
Yeah, but like I said, that was probably a fluke. So
no, that's become the expectation.
Yeah, you already set the bar on that one.
Yeah, see, I knew. See, I knew that's probably where it was heading.
No.
That's right.
Well, see, like I said, it just happens because everything aligned, you know, in my favor, and like I said, I like what Dan said. See, I had a personal goal of, you know, basically doing a little better, you know, at least making the 300 count. But, you know, after Saturday night before going to bed, I was like, well, I'm at about 330. I managed to squeeze out almost 200 contacts today. I could probably, man, should I shoot for? Yes, I was like, should I shoot for 5? Yeah, what the hell? And why not?
That's right.
And you know what? The bands got terrible Sunday.
It was so.
And you still did it, Steve.
They were horrible on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, it was hard to get a single cue, and you were able to dig that out. So that was.
And see, and I had to say, and like I said, that if I didn't make the changes to my station, I would have never picked out those in the mud stations because of, well, I mean, and the other thing too was that I'm still trying to mitigate the noise on 20 meters and up because I mean, I know part of the reason is because my beam is close to the house, but it's also very low at 20 feet, so. So especially when I'm pointing toward the west and the northwest, I'm pointing over my roof and it's picking up noise in my house when I do that. So in the afternoon on 20, it was getting very difficult to hear, especially when Japan was coming in and they were very weak. So forget about even trying to hear them because that's how, you know. So that's going to be an improvement that I need to make come springtime is raise it up. You know, get it over the, you know, at least get the bottom of it over the roof line. So that way, you know, I can get, so that way it's above my house, but not so high where it becomes an eyesore from the front of the house. Yeah. And that's, you know, so when you live in an HOA and you know, luckily it's not a an authoritarian HOA. We do have clauses that we are allowed to have antennas, you know, just as long as it's out of sight. So backyard is where it goes. And I mean, I would love to put it on the house, but there'll be two objections to that. One, my wife, and number two, my wife.
Yeah, exactly.
Those are two big ones.
That's right. Well, folks, we are approaching the bewitching hour. We've been on here for almost two hours. It's been another good conversation, lively conversation. I hope everybody enjoyed it. I hope we answered some questions. Paul, we wish you the very best this coming weekend.
Yeah, good luck, man.
And we hope to have you among us for a long time to come. Same
Absolutely.
with Rich and Bob and Chris and
Yep.
and the rest of the gang. We appreciate it. We miss Tom. I know speaking of homeowner associations, I think Tom was involved with one of those, and I'm sure he has upset chairs and tables, I'm sure, as we speak.
He would much rather have been here.
And I do appreciate Dean kind of setting this up for us there. But
and I know we want to wrap this up, but are there any burning questions that we haven't touched on, or that you really wanted to get some input on while you have everybody here? Guess that settles that.
Okay,
just let you guys know,
will,
I uploaded the document onto groups.io
group. Good.
Yeah, I enabled the notification, so everybody should have an email with just to let them know that it's in there. I did post it back in December, but I know it probably got lost in lost in the source. So,
all right, well, folks, we will reconvene next month, and as always, we're always interested in what other folks are wanting us to examine and talk about there. We don't have all the answers, but if we don't have an answer, we'll make one up. So at any rate, it's good seeing everybody, and we thank everybody for coming this evening, and we will catch up with you all again in the very near future. You all take care.
Take care. Good night.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Good night.